We have very, very successful entrepreneurs over here, and though there are some global statistics that I'll want to start with around glass ceiling. Globally, they say 4% of the Fortune 500 companies are run by women. That's really a very small number. They also say that when men apply for a job, even when they are 60% confident, but when a woman is applying for a job, she has to be 100% confident, which clearly talks about the kind of confidence, more confident that is required or that is perceived by a woman before she's qualifying for a job or going for a job. However, I have a very different take to it. The industry in which I am is actually ruled by women. So the media and the entertainment industry, and I have my boss sitting over there who's a woman and part of the top 50 most influential women in the country. And I haven't seen this glass ceiling, at least in my industry, right? And that's the reason why I said, it is contrarian as far as I am concerned, but still I would want to know from each one of you your stories, and I'll start with Neha. If you could tell us what are the challenges that you faced as you grew your startup and your aspirations as an entrepreneur.
But I think challenges is what you make of the challenge. Whether it's a challenge or it's an opportunity is up to you. Yes, I think every woman here must have been asked in all of their job interviews, what's your family plan? When are you going to have kids? Do you plan to take leaves? I mean, these are offending questions, but then only offending if you make them so. So I think like I said, challenge could be an opportunity. So play to your strength. So I run a brand called Clovia, which is a lingerie brand. So you could say that I played to my strength. I'm the only one girl founder in a team of 3 founders, and I can totally boss over them and tell them that grow a pair and then talk to me. So I think that's how one needs to handle it.
I don't think we ever actually have a goal of breaking any glass ceiling. And I don't think every day when we wake up and get to work, we really think that, okay, we have to break some glass ceiling. We just go to work to do our very best, which I guess is the same motivation for anybody else, whether it's a guy or a girl. And it just turns out that when you achieve something, it is said that you've broken the glass ceiling. So in my own case, I've had a very successful corporate career working with some of India's finest companies. And then I became an entrepreneur. And I raised funding from the very first investor I met on a business plan. And it turned out to be a record in India. I raised 5 million on a business plan, which hasn't been broken since. And absolutely no questions were asked of me in terms of how will I start a company, how many kids I have, am I married, and so on and so forth. But in life, yes, people have asked me that question. So just to even out the odds, every time I interview a man these days, I make sure to ask them how many children they have and how they plan to manage it. But, it's just in a lighter way. But honestly, I don't think if there is a glass ceiling at all, if you reinvent yourself as a woman and you put up your hand and you take the initiative, I don't think there's really any barrier.
That's really nice. And in fact, it looks like glass ceiling as a word has been devised by males. I don't know. Maybe it's true because none of you think that there is a glass ceiling. Anvita, what would your point of view be in this?
I don't really think that there's a glass ceiling. Being a woman, you're often asked that, oh, is this your hobby before you get married? Are you going to have children? Are you going to not work after you get married? I don't think it has anything to do with that. In my opinion, there are challenges for any startup. I don't think gender really makes a difference in that sense. There are challenges, even when you, let's say, for example, start exercising, there are roadblocks. There are challenges even then. But I guess focus is something that, no problem that you're going to be faced with. But I also feel that it's industry specific. I think e-commerce in itself is a very welcoming industry, especially fashion, for women. So I don't think really there's a glass ceiling out there for us. So yeah, that's what my take.
I think this is a rather contrarian panel because we're all of the belief that there is no glass ceiling. I mean, that it is a term that's devised to kind of, put a gender divide between men and women, because I think I was truly not aware for a very long time that being a woman and being an entrepreneur, that there is that it could be an oxymoron. I was raised by a lady doctor. I went to college at Lady Shri Ram College, where I was surrounded by ambitious, powerful, empowered women. I was working at Titan, where one of the most inspiring people was my boss, and she was a woman. And I started FabAlley with my best friend, who also is a woman. So, and we funded, and at no point were we asked, so what happens when you get married? And what happens when you have children? Because at the end of it, it's about building a strong business. It's about persevering. It's about how much you put into it. And it's about prioritizing, honestly. So we've never, for both of us, we've never felt that being women has been a drawback. It's only when we attend these kind of sessions and we see the number of the men to women ratio that I feel a little concerned that maybe there should be more women. But even that's changed so much in the last couple of years. So all in all, I am not of the opinion that there is a glass ceiling. I think if there is a glass ceiling, that's for the individual, and that could apply for men and women equally.
I personally feel that the people over here are all very accomplished. They have done well, and hence they have this perspective. So I'm changing the entire perception. Now think about a government job, or think about somebody from a second ranked town, a girl from a moderate family wanting to do versus a guy in the same family. Do you think these sexist divides still exist? Maybe not here in this panel, because all of you have progressed and you are very, very successful in your own areas. But India, which is still 70% rural, or where still the sex ratio in most of the states is below 100, do you think that these issues exist for a girl in general, for a woman in general who wants to come into the work life?
Yeah, actually, I also wanted to add, after hearing all three of you, is that I think it's wrong to say that there is no glass ceiling or there is no discrimination happening. It's what you make of it. So it's fortunate that you guys didn't hear these questions. I have heard these questions several times about how do you plan to work after marriage and kids and etc., etc. So yes, it happens, and I'm sort of embarrassed to share that in my own company, I realized that there was a girl who applied, and our HR manager had sort of not even shortlisted her. And when I asked him, he said because it's a tech post and she'll be required to work after 9, 8, etc. And I don't think it's appropriate. And I had to blast him, because one has to ask the girl whether you are okay to work. It's a startup, of course. You are expected to. It's not that the organization will mold to your particular life format, but you have to. If you're willing to work hard, then we are willing to support you. And I think I would request each of us. We represent upcoming or a very, very well-established organizations to give women a chance. At least ask them, are they willing to work as hard as the rest of the team members?
I would say definitely there are a lot of difficulties that women face, and it is not just in rural India. It's very much prevalent in the big cities, and we see it all around us. And I think as women entrepreneurs and founders of companies, we try our best to overcome it. And like I said, quite often the biases are very deep. Like she said, they are almost assumptions that are made that a woman can't do this. And in some roles, I have been working very hard to have a tech team of women, but it's been very difficult in spite of my best efforts to hire. It's just that there are so many more men out there. And all things being equal, I still give a slight preference to hire a woman, because I think culturally I do find that they work out well quite often, and they have the right set of motivations. But equally, I don't want to sound like I blame men for this, because I don't think that's an accurate portrayal. Women themselves quite often are very reticent, and they withdraw from the race way too early, and they accept defeat way too early, and they themselves have inherent assumptions in their mind. As soon as I founded the company last year, my company Melorra, which is an online jewelry company, the head of design that I had hired, and she's a very important person, she is the head of the jewelry design department, she became pregnant with her second child. And she came to me to offer her resignation. And I said, but why? And she said, it's an early stage startup, we're about to launch, I already have a toddler who's 2 years old, and my hands will be really full. And I don't think you need me. I don't think you can afford to have somebody like me who will be ending up working from home and who will be not working all the hours. It's going to be really hard for me. So I told her, please take back your resignation. What makes you think that I'm not open to having a woman work from home? It's just an inherent assumption that she made, that if it's a startup, there's so much pressure that, we will not be supportive of her. So I told her, look, you're here and we are going through the life journey together. There will be ups and downs in both personal and professional lives. But when I hire a person, I am committed to seeing you through your personal life story also. She's still with us, and I gave her a 6 months maternity leave. She's still on her maternity leave. But I tell you, the fact that she's on her maternity leave has not stopped her from contributing whatever she can. That is the sort of passion and ownership that I see in women who are well supported by their employers.
I have seen over a period of time, things have changed. And today, there are organizations which even allow you to have, get your kids to office. And there are specific rooms that are available for you to nurse kids. And that helps the mother so much. So do you think that these changes have actually happened? I would want to have your perspective, Tanvi, on this.
I do believe that women are no longer treated as ticking time bombs, like that they will work really hard till a certain point in their life, and after that they'll marry and have children and be out of the workforce. And that's something that, FabAlley is started by women, primarily comprises of women, and that's something that we feel that we as women and blanket, I think I should apply this to male employers as well, need to encourage, because we need to encourage women to work and not quit by making it easier for them, because prioritization and work-life balance, it's a challenge. And sure, we may have had it easier, like all of us may have had it easier, but a lot of women don't have that option. So allowing flexi timings, allowing a longer paid maternity leave, and starting a small creche service with a day nurse, these are some things that FabAlley has done, and we would go the distance for our employees because, as Saroja rightly said, the kind of passion and commitment we see from women, we would not want to lose them. They are not placeholders, they are actually valuable resources, and we need to treat them and nurture them as such, and that's what I would suggest and recommend to everybody.
Fashion is all about women, right? And that's the reason why maybe there's no glass ceiling at all over there.
My advice to women entrepreneurs to be would be that be cautious. We live in India, so be cautious about where you're working and keep your eyes and ears open. And really, the sky is the limit. We have to encourage women. I have a soft spot for hiring women. That's because I agree that the passion that you see, and even in my organization, Confidential Couture, we have about more or less women working with us. And the passion and the motivation that they have is it's a delight to see that. So it's important for us to empower them, and that's what I do personally as well in my workplace. Me and my co-founder, we both are women. We started the startup, and we believe that just the power of making decisions, if it lies with them, it just empowers them a lot more, and you see better results. So that's what I believe in. That's what my motto.
When you are sitting in front of investors, right? Because that's a very important part of the entrepreneurial business. Do you see it there? Because again, it's all about the environment, but in this ecosystem, investors are a very critical element.
And do you see this? Did you ever get a sense that there was a glass ceiling?
When Clovia started at the same time, I had delivered my kids. So it was very funny. Our prospective investor walked in to my office when my baby was still sleeping in the crib next. So I think I set the premise right, that I'm on top of things. So, and also I think these are people who are, who've been able to overcome certain biases. But in our case, our investors are not just people who bring in financial assistance, but also our suppliers, our vendors, people who give us credit, people who partner us through our journey. They were, yes, a bit difficult to sort of conquer their hearts and minds. I got a lot of questions. People even told us, "Madam, we want to talk to your husband instead." So yes, but all of that happened, and you need to work very hard at it. But no, not from the investor community, thankfully.
I must say that I've heard some stories about this and from women entrepreneur friends, but my experience has been totally different. The very first investor I met, like I said, funded us, and I asked for 2 million. They gave me 5 million. Wow. So it is a very, very unusual story. And like I said, to their credit, and really to their credit, they have never asked me then at the time of the investment or even till today, how many kids I have, how do I manage my work-life balance, nothing of that sort. But I think they simply went by the fact that I have a lot of experience. I have worked for over 25 years creating some of India's finest brands. Titan in the early days, Tanishq in the early days. I headed the retail business for Dell in India for many years. So I think they simply saw my experience and background, and they just funded me for what I bring to the table, and they had not any biases in their mind. And I think, honestly, it is more to their credit than mine.
Sure, that's
but
true.
It is true that there are investors like that in this country,
Yeah.
and I think the environment is changing. There's so many women entrepreneurs that are successfully raising funds. All I do really wish, however, that there were more women in the VC companies.
True.
I have hardly seen any women partners, even globally for that matter. Even in the Bay Area, they are a very, very small minority. And I think it would be good for the VC industry, not just for the women entrepreneur ecosystem, because when there are women in the VC world, then the perspective gets a little bit more nuanced and rounded.
Sure.
And I think they would benefit. So I really look forward to that day.
I feel, obviously one has had multiple investor meetings, but my personal experience was that it got to marriage and babies later, but that you're so young. Are you sure? Like, is this like a hobby? Or so I guess the seriousness, they wanted to just see the conviction within me. So yes, that was followed by what's your 10-year plan? Do you plan to settle down anytime soon? Kids? There were these questions asked, but I think that's a lot to do with, I was probably 22 at that time or 23. So it has something to do with that, not really, I'm sure there are like investors out there who just believe in you and they don't care about like where you come from, where you're going to be, who you're going to marry, etc. So they were just these initial questions, but I guess that's to do with it.
I will again echo Saroja. It's very hard to explain fashion to a bunch of men. And I think that's where the pushback has come from in our funding journey. But in terms of, and we're not just, I'm not the only woman co-founder, founder for FabAlley. We're two women. So it's not that there is a backup of, if she, for some reason disappears for 3 months to have a baby or whatever, there is a backup. It's just the two of us. And even then, honestly, we've never had that question. Tons and tons of questions on path to profitability, to scale and everything, and which is how it should be. So we've actually had the privilege to work with and pitch to a lot of, to very probably evolved VCs who've never ever asked us this question.